Hello everyone and welcome back. So we finally have the full version in our hot little hands. There's several major differences between the released version and the early versions you may be familiar with. One of them is hunting. I'll do an overview of the differences in a separate video, but the changes in hunting are significant and impactful enough to merit a deep dive. I'll first cover the differences in the full version, and later on I'll share findings from the experiments I've conducted on defeating different types of animals. Hopefully it will help all of you to be successful at hunting in the new version. If you played early access, you'll be used to being able to defeat all enemies with ranged weapons. Animals would move slower as they took damage, and the net result was that even the wooden spear was good enough to defeat all enemies, as long as you had enough of them. Wounded animals that attempted to flee would be slowed down by your initial damage, so you could almost guarantee that you'd be able to catch up to them. Spears would also stick to animals, so you could track them even if you didn't have the tracker perk from the hunting skill tree. Headshots cause more damage, but any hit stuns animals, so if you're quick enough, you can stun lock them. This is why I recommend having around 8 spears when hunting, because you're liable to run out mid-kill. It's fine if animals flee, because you can use survival vision to see the spears still in them. So even if you don't have the perk that highlights animals, you can always track the one you're hunting. As I mentioned at the start of the video, things are now dramatically different. The key differences are that the animals are no longer slowed down by damage, and that animals are more extreme in their behaviour. Melee has also been reworked to make it more violent. The lack of the slowdown effect makes animals significantly more dangerous. If you can't kill them in 1 or 2 shots, you'll find yourself in melee range very quickly. That makes animals like bears and wisents exceptionally dangerous. Animals that are aggressive are now more aggressive. For example, boars used to just squeal at you and leave you alone if you walked away, but now they're liable to chase you to attack. Animals that take enough damage to flee, or those that flee immediately, will move away much faster than they used to. The only way to keep up is by sprinting. And even then, there's a good chance you lose track of them, unless you understand their behaviour. Basically, hunting is not the easy source of meat it used to be. You have to prepare and have a plan. The animations for wielding tools and weapons have been changed. If you chop down a tree or hammer a building, you'll notice that swings are more like what you'd do if you were wielding them as weapons, because that's exactly the case. It used to be very difficult to hit animals with axes, but now it's quite viable, which is nice because aggressive animals are more likely to get into melee range than they used to. And fleeing animals are much more difficult to hit with ranged weapons than used to be the case. All in all, your strategies have to adjust. In the following sections, I'll share some notes on the behaviour of different animals and some strategies I've tested that you can use to deal with them with various weapons. My Year 1 guide covered how you can quickly get to a smithy, and copper is easily accessible, so you shouldn't bother with stone arrows, and I won't cover them. The last version of early access made rabbits much more docile. They might slowly hop away from you, and were easy to track once you'd spotted them, especially if you had the tracker perk that highlights animals. Now they go into flight mode immediately if they spot you, and move away at high speed. You can try chasing them, but my experiments show that they don't stop fleeing until they've despawned, so it seems that unless you can catch them quickly, you may as well not bother because your stamina will give out before they stop. They're still as fragile as they used to be, so you can still one-shot them even with a wooden spear, The difference is that you have to sneak to get close enough to throw a spear. This is pretty reliable. Another alternative is to chase them down and whack them with a melee weapon. You have to sneak up to get close enough, but a stone axe is good enough, and with the new swinging animations, it's easier to land a hit. If they flee, and there's other rabbits that haven't fled, I'd also recommend changing targets, rather than chasing the fleeing rabbit. Deer are flight animals, like rabbits. They'll run away from you if you get close enough, or cause damage to them. The biggest difference is the speed of flight. You have no hope of ever catching them. But deers also never stop fleeing because of the bleed mechanic. When you wound an animal, you may start bleeding, and that causes regular damage, which in turn will trigger the flight response. This mechanic was also present in early access, but deer will flee much slower and for shorter distances. Combine the bleed with the new fleeing mechanic, and deers never stop fleeing long enough for you to ever finish them off. My advice is that if you can't get a one-shot kill, then don't bother chasing and just change targets. It's very likely that they'll keep fleeing in panic until they despawn. Fortunately, the lowest level bow that you unlock at Hunting 1 allows you to get headshot kills on those with the copper arrows. These are very easy to unlock and craft, though you probably have to buy the linen thread to make the bow. I should point out that bugs do not fall to headshots with bows. I've tested this on longbows, which have the highest damage out of all bows, and copper arrows. You'll have to wait until you get higher level arrows or unlock crossbows. But basically, if you see horns on a deer early on, leave it alone and target those instead. These are similar in behaviour to deer, but with some differences. The bad news is that a one-shot kill will have to wait until you get more powerful weapons, so a chase is unavoidable. The good news is that they're not as flighty as deer, and you actually have a hope of catching them after your first strike. They'll circle around you, so if you take a diagonal path, it should help in keeping them in sight. If you crouch, it seems to help to take them out of flight mode. Once they've stopped, you can take another shot, and hopefully that should finish them off. Either way, expect a moose hunt to take some time. These all behave in a similar manner, so I'll cover them in one section. Their default behavior is to flee. Badgers are a little slow, but foxes and lynxes will usually need you to chase them down in a similar manner to rabbits. The difference is that once you damage them, they turn aggressive and charge you. They're fast enough that you shouldn't bother with fleeing. Ironically, this is beneficial for you, because that makes them easier to kill, but you better be ready to fire missiles or change to a melee weapon. Once you've done enough damage, they'll attempt to flee. So again, be ready to either throw a missile weapon or chase them down. They're not extremely tough, so it's entirely possible to kill them before they even reach you if you throw missiles from far enough away that you can get 3 or 4 spears off. Once you get a bow and copper arrows, it'll be possible to one-shot them. Boars and wolves are aggressive animals. They won't flee like foxes do. Instead, they stand their ground and give warning growls and squeals. If you remain close to them, they'll eventually charge. One change in version 1.0 is that they're more persistent in chasing you once triggered. I've been chased halfway across the map by a boar previously. But the warning stance allows you to get at least one shot off before combat starts. If you can fire accurately from sufficiently far away, it's entirely possible to kill them before they reach you. Ideally, you'd kill them before they have a chance to flee, but always have a melee weapon like an axe prepared. They're easier to keep up with than other types of animals and tend to stop fleeing sooner. Early on, when you're still using wooden spears, I recommend hunting boars for leather. You can use that leather to make small bags for use in farming. This is because boars will run towards you, so you can get multiple hits as they charge, and they're easier to chase once they're fleeing. A bow and copper arrows are enough for a one-shot kill on both boars and wolves. Bears have always been dangerous. They're one of the two animals that you should never expect to kill in one shot, even with the best weapons. You'll get one shot before they'll start charging. Iron crossbows with iron bolts allow you to kill them with 2 shots, but the slow reload and the fact that you can't sprint while reloading means you should expect to take at least 1 hit. Faster reloading weapons, like recurve bows, are much better against animals you can't kill in one shot. The key is to sprint away from bears when they get close and turn and shoot. After enough hits, they should begin fleeing. My recommendation is to never get into melee with a bear. It seems to have a reach advantage, and it'll swing much faster than you can. So run all the way home if that's what it takes to get away from a bear. An alternative strategy is to snipe from long range. If you're outside the detection range of the bear, it'll flee rather than charge you. That allows you to follow them and repeat the snipe until they're dead. Do not attack if you can help it. Version 1.0 has made them into murder machines. But luckily they're not naturally aggressive unless you attack them first. Iron crossbows and iron bolts will two-shot them, but as with bears, you will take at least one hit while reloading. Unlike bears, you have no hope of creating separation with these things. Sniping doesn't work. They're way faster than you are, and can change direction on a penny. Trying to use trees as cover does not work, so you basically have to embrace face tanking the beast. Unless you have the best missile weapons, you'd best change to a melee weapon and start swinging away. Make sure you have plenty of healing available. Once they start fleeing, you can use the same strategy as with mooses. Follow them diagonally as they flee in a circle, and keep in sight. Crouch as much as possible, hopefully that will take them out of flight mode, then finish them off. So after all that, you should have a good idea of how different animals behave differently in version 1.0. That should allow you to predict and take advantage of that behavior during the actual hunt, just like a real hunter would. But you may also have picked up on some things to keep in mind before you even go hunting. Have plenty of healing when roaming the countryside. Carry 50 to 100 broadleaves, or the equivalent in potions. Basically enough to heal yourself at least once over, if not twice over. It was important before, now it's critical. Bows are very important now. Many of the smaller animals will go down to a headshot from a bow with copper arrows. That should be enough to get you as much meat and leather or fur as you used to be able to get in early access. So it's not a bad idea to invest in buying one linen thread once you have your smithy and making a bow. Headshots are the key to easy hunting. This makes perks that aid in shooting, such as steadier hand for less sway, and lock and load for faster shooting, that much more important. Understanding how crouching works, and maybe taking perks to improve it, are important to getting close enough to guarantee headshots. Don't get too attached to your missiles. Since most animals flee at high speed, you'll often face the choice of either picking up your arrows and spears or chasing the animal. Chase first and come back once you've got your prey, but expect to lose at least some of the missiles you fired off. The stamina is not to be underestimated. I already used to advise people to maximize the athlete perk in the survival skill tree, but with the way animals flee from you, or you from them, having the ability to sprint for longer is essential. Health buffing perks are important. I used to take Strong as an Oak or Solid as a Rock from the survival skill tree, but with more dangerous animals and bandits around, it's probably worth taking both. Buffing potions. There's potions to buff stamina, health, and other stats like melee damage. Try to stick to animals that don't require potions to defeat, But don't neglect potions if you find yourself in real trouble. Animals are very different in version 1.0. Some of these changes are more realistic. For example, wounded animals fleeing is realistic, and some are not. For example, deer fleeing until they despawn is a problem. Early on, hunting will seem significantly more difficult than it used to be. But as you saw, once you get access to even the simplest of upgrades to your gear, your bows and copper arrows, it's not as daunting as it might seem at first. Once you understand the differences and how to deal with them, you'll be fine. What's your experience with hunting in version 1.0? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. Let me know what you thought about in the comments. Feel free to leave a like, subscribe and hit the bell button to be notified when new videos come out. See you soon.